الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين، والصلاة والسلام على عبده ورسوله وخليله وصفوته من خلقه نبينا وإمامنا وسيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن سلك سبيله واهتدى بهداه إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. A brother just reminded me of something that happened back in the days when a famous Saudi singer died while he was on stage playing the guitar. Very famous. And at that time, it became a controversy. And I asked Shejh Ahmed Xhibril, rahimahullah ta'ala, to say something pertaining to the tarahum an a fasiq who is a mujahir in his fusuq. The discussion, point being, is the discussion back then was for a fasiq who's open in public, mujahir in his fusuq. Now it's about a kafir and a kafira, and a mushrik and a mushrika. Before we begin, let's talk about the basics. Islam is about submission. We are Muslim and Islam calls for us to submit to the Quran and the Sunnah. Everything we need is in the Quran and the Sunnah. Matters of the deen and matters of the dunya. The verses ordering us to submit to the Quran and the Sunnah are numerous. وما كان لمؤمن ولا مؤمن إذا قضى الله ورسوله أمرا أن يكون لهم الخيرة من أمرهم فلا وربك لا يؤمنون حتى يحكموك فيما شجر بينهم ثم لا يجدوا في أنفسهم حرجا مما قضيت ويسلموا تسليما إنما كان قول المؤمنين إذا دعوا إلى الله ورسوله ليحكم بينهم أن يقولوا سمعنا وأطعنا. Not only do we have to accept them and submit to them, but we have to do so with ultimate respect, humbleness, and humility to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look at the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. In a matter that relates to this, look at his respect in this matter. In Sahih Muslim, زار النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قبر أمه فبكى وأبكى من حوله فقال استأذنت ربي في أن أستغفر لها فلم يؤذن لي واستأذنته في أن أزور قبرها فأذن لي فزوروا القبور فإنها تذكر الموت. He said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, I sought permission from Allah to seek forgiveness for my mother, and it wasn't granted to me. And I sought permission to visit her grave, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted that to me. So visit the graves because they remind you of death. Look at the respect of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I sought permission. Ista'dhantu Rabbi. This hadith alone, or one of the ones I mentioned earlier, the ayat or proofs, that's enough to dismantle all their rationales and vain talk. He wasn't allowed to make, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, dua for the womb that carried him and the hands that raised him. And like that is his uncle Abu Talib, who ferociously defended his nephew in the most critical times. So what do you get out of this hadith? I mentioned it in the context of how one must not only submit to the revelation, but submit with respect and humility. Compare that to the kufr statements that you see today. If Shireen Abu Aqli is not allowed in Jannah, I don't want that Jannah, or we don't want that Jannah. Astaghfirullah al-Azim. Another one said, what kind of Jannah doesn't allow so-and-so to be in it? A second benefit, since we mentioned this hadith, I sought permission. This is a ibadah. You need to bring the proof. The Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam went to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to get permission. One of the ignorant had said, I want them to bring me proof. Even though there's plenty of proof against them, none of that is really needed. The burden of proof is on them because this is a matter of ibadah. Also, while we're at it, this is Abu Talib, the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, and you know what he did. And the messenger, the mother of the Messenger ﷺ, they did more than any of the kuffar today could ever do, from the reporters or inventors or humanitarian aid workers. And he said, فَلَمْ يُؤْذَنْ لِي. I wasn't granted permission to make istighfar for them. There's more benefits. We may touch upon them later, inshallah. Look at Nuh alayhi salam. ونادى نوح ربه فقال ربي إن ابني من أهلي وإن وعدك الحق وأنت أحكم الحاكمين. Nuh said, Rabbi, my son is from my family. Your promise is true and you're the most just of the judges. قال يا نوح إنه ليس من أهلك إنه عمل غير صالح فلا تسألني ما ليس لك به علم إني أعظك أن تكون من الجاهلين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him, Nuh is not your family. He's not righteous. And don't ask that which you don't have knowledge of. Look at the humility of Nuh. He apologizes. قال رب إني أعوذ بك أن أسألك ما ليس لي به علم وإلا تغفر لي وترحمني أكن من الخاسرين. Nuh said, Rabbi, I seek refuge with you from asking you that which I have no knowledge of. Unless you forgive me and have mercy upon me, I'll be truly indeed among those who are losers. The brother showed me 2 clips before the class, and it's astonishing. 2 heads of the dalala speaking on this matter. And it's nothing less than nifaq and zandaqa, intellect of the shayateen, and characteristics and methods of the Yahud. The Yahud, the ones they want to defeat. The first one is the one I said earlier. He's among those who spearheaded this matter pertaining to this journalist. But early on, years ago, there was somebody else who started this. He repeated the verse, وَرَحْمَتِي وَسِعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. Both of them actually did. وَرَحْمَتِي وَسِعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. My mercy encompasses everything. They said, the reporter, a kafir or mushrik or mushrika, falls under that everything. So the mercy of Allah encompasses them, so we can make dua for them. This one who mentioned this verse and repeated it, had he continued on with the verse, he would have refuted himself. Which I'm not saying refute himself for himself, he knows this. But I'm saying for his ignorant masses who follow him. Or had any one of them bothered, who listened to him and still listen to him, had any one of them even bothered to open the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they would have seen the reality of this matter. They take a portion of the verse that's against them to do tadlis on this ummah. Let's go over the verses because you don't need anything more than the verses to respond to them in using that verse. وَاكْتُبْ لَنَا فِي هَذِهِ الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ إِنَّا هُدْنَا إِلَيْكَ. O Allah, ordain for us good in this world, and in the hereafter we have turned on to you. قال عذابي أصيب به من أشاء ورحمتي وسعت كل شيء. Allah said, my punishment I'll afflict who I will, and my mercy encompasses everything. ورحمتي وسعت كل شيء. شيء, كل شيء is everything. Now listen carefully. Not the next verse. This is a continuation of the same verse. فسأكتبها للذين يتقون ويؤتون الزكاة والذين هم بآياتنا يؤمنون. It will be ordained. What's going to be ordained? My mercy will be ordained. It will be specified for who? يتقون. Those who have taqwa. ويؤتون الزكاة. Give zakah. والذين هم بآياتنا يؤمنون. Those who believe in our ayat. Allah defined exactly who gets that mercy. He made a limitation on it. Further conditions and limitations to qualify for the mercy of Allah. In the next verse now. الذين يتبعون الرسول النبي الأمي الذي يجدونه مكتوبا عندهم في التوراة والإنجيل. The ones who follow the messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم, who can't read or write. مكتوبا عندهم في التوراة والإنجيل, who they'll find written in their Torah and Injil. يأمرهم بالمعروف وينهاهم عن المنكر. He commands them to do ma'ruf. Ma'ruf is tawheed and everything Islam ordained. Starting with tawheed and everything Islam ordained. And he forbids them from munkar. Munkar, number one, is kufr and shirk, and everything Islam has forbidden. ويحل لهم الطيبات ويحرم عليهم الخبائث ويضع عنهم إصرهم والأغلال التي كانت عليهم. He permits for them the lawful, الطيبات, everything good. And he prohibits the unlawful, الخبائث, everything evil. فالذين آمنوا به وعزروه ونصروه واتبعوا النور الذي أنزل معه أولئك هم المفلحون. Those who believe in him. Who? Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Honor him. عزروه ونصروه, and help him, give him victory. واتبعوا النور الذي أنزل معه. Follow the light, which is the Quran that was sent with him. And those will be the ones who are successful. Look at the conditions, stipulations, and limitations to the rahmah of Allah. فسأكتبها للذين يتقون. Taqwa. يؤتون الزكاة. Give zakah. Believe in the ayat. Follow the messenger who's in the Torah and the Injil. The one who orders them with the good and forbids them with the evil. To do the lawful, starting with tawheed. To refrain from the unlawful, starting with shirk and kufr. To honor and help the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. To follow the light, the Quran, which was sent down with him. Does the one they're trying to include in the rahmah of Allah, who lived around Muslims and reported Muslims in the news for 26 years or so, she believe in the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam and in tawheed, and does bara'ah from shirk and trinity? Who put these restrictions on who gets the rahmah of Allah? Who put these limitations? Ar-Rahman, who owns the rahmah. The way the verse is worded, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says His mercy encompasses everything, very broad, then limits it to specific characteristics. It's meant to be specific to that and only that. So now, after these zanadiqah, these shuyukh of dalala, after they use this verse in the context that they did, to allow a mushrika be included under the rahmah of Allah in that verse, the next time they lecture and mention the shaitan, we expect to hear ash-shaytan rahimahullah, astaghfirullah. We also expect to hear Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab rahimahumullahu jami'a, astaghfirullah al-azim. When they mention the story of Musa and Fir'aun, we expect to hear Musa alayhi salam and Fir'aun rahimahullah. They strongly oppose As-Sisi. Their hatred for As-Sisi is not founded on aqeedah and tawheed like us. So As-Sisi, who they despise, we expect them to say rahimahullah when he dies. Does the shaitan, Fir'aun, and As-Sisi, and Abu Lahab, and Abu Jahl not fall under everything, shay, the way they interpret it? وَرَحْمَتِي وَسِعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. My mercy encompasses everything, and stop there? Why can't they include Fir'aun too, just like they included somebody that they like? Why do they limit the verse to kuffar and mushrikeen they like, and exclude kuffar and mushrikeen they don't like? أَهُمْ يَقْسِمُونَ رَحْمَةَ رَبِّكَ. My mercy encompasses everything. Is it the shaitan and the Sisi and Fir'aun among that everything with that interpretation? Do you see the nifaq? This is nifaq. This is not random ijtihad mistakes or innocent mistakes. This is an entire movement aimed at demolishing wala and bara, taking a snippet of a verse and giving it the opposite meaning and giving the rationales that they gave. That's the work and thinking of the shaitan. And it's the methodology of the Yahud. Let me explain and prove that. Do you realize what they did is exactly what the Yahud did when they went to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam to judge among them pertaining to a man and woman who committed zina? The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, what do you find in the Torah pertaining to this matter? What do you find in the Torah about stoning, about rajm? They said, we only disgrace and flog them. That's what we do. They were lying. They're liars. Abdullah ibn Salam, who was familiar with the Torah, he said, you're liars. Rajm, stoning, is in the Torah. They brought the Torah. They opened it. One of them put his hand over the verse of the rajm. Then he read what's before and after it. He left out that portion of rajm out. Abdullah ibn Salam said, lift up your hand. Where the point, the part where he lifted up his hand is where the verse of Rajm was. That's exactly what they're doing. That's how it resembles the Yahud. They're taking something and hiding something. It resembles the Yahud because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about them, أَفَتُؤْمِنُونَ بِبَعْضِ الْكِتَابِ وَتَكْفُرُونَ بِبَعْضِ. It's also exactly how the shaitan thinks. I'm talking about the shaitan of the jinn. These shayateen of the ins think exactly like the shaitan of the jinn. Because the shayateen of the ins take their deen from that kind of the shaitan of the jinn. Listen to this. Ibn Jurayj and Qatada and Abu Bakr al-Hudhali and Ibn Abbas said about the verse, وَرَحْمَتِي وَسِعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ, my mercy encompasses everything. They said about that verse, Ibn Jurayj, Qatada, Abu Bakr al-Hudhali and Ibn Abbas said, the shaitan said, I'm included in that everything. I'm included. The shaitan said that. You see where they get their information from? They said, so the shaitan was excluded with the following stipulation in the verse. Allah excluded him with that stipulation. فَسَأَكْتُبُهَا لِلَّذِينَ يَتَّقُونَ وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ بِآيَاتِنَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. Allah excluded the shaitan with that, they said. Ibn Jurayj and Qatada and Abu Bakr al-Hudhali and Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma and rahimahumullah jami'ah, they said the Yahud then took that sentence and said, we fear Allah, we're among the muttaqeen, so that applies, and we give zakah, so we're included in the mercy, in that everything, kull shay, we're included in that. Ibn Abbas and those with him radiallahu anhuma, he said, that group with him, they said, then the next part of the verse, the next verse, the following stipulation excluded them. الَّذِينَ يَتَّبِعُونَ الرَّسُولَ النَّبِيَّ الْأُمِّيِّ. The ones who follow the messenger who doesn't read or write. The Yahud don't follow the messenger, so they were excluded. Then Ibn Abbas and those with him said, the rahmah was denied for Iblis and the Yahud, and it was preserved for this ummah. In another athar, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma recited, وَرَحْمَتِي وَسِعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ فَسَأَكْتُبُهَا لِلَّذِينَ يَتَّقُونَ. He said, جَعَلَهَا اللَّهُ لِهَذِهِ الْأُمَّةِ. It's only for this ummah. Do you see where the imams of the dalala extract their proof? The Yahud and the shayateen. Using the verse the way they did is tadlis. It's deceit and fraud. Let me give you this rationale. If someone got up on the minbar, he said, Ya ibadallah, salah is over. There's no more salah. In fact, if you make salah, you're going to a special valley in Jahannam. That valley is especially for one who makes salah. Stop the salah. What's your proof, Sheikh? Woe to those who pray. What do you consider someone who does that? He left out the following verses that define that verse and change the meaning to the total opposite. الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ. The ones who delay their salah from its fixed times. It changed it from woe to those who pray to woe to those who delay their prayer. What the imams of dalala did here about وَرَحْمَتِي وَسِعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ is no different. In fact, here, it's not in the following verses, it's in the same verse and also in the following verse. قال عذابي أصيب به من أشاء ورحمتي وسعت كل شيء فسأكتبها للذين يتقون ويؤتون الزكاة والذين هم بآياتنا يؤمنون. عطية al-Awfi, even though he was weak in hadith, he said a very nice statement pertaining to this in summary and in meaning. I'll say it. He said mercy was ordained only for the muttaqeen. He said the kafir gets his provision and goodness in this dunya due to the great vast magnitude of rahmah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descends upon the believers. He said what kuffar get of goodness in this dunya, it's from the vast magnitude of rahmah that Allah descends upon the believers. Once the akhirah comes, they don't even get that. He said in akhirah, it's only ordained for the believers. He said, he gave a metaphor. He said it's like two people in a dark area. One of them's carrying a lamp. He carries a lamp to light the area, to illuminate the area for himself. The other one doesn't have a light. He benefits from the one with the light because he's in close proximity and in the vicinity. Once the one with the light moves on, the other one is left in total darkness. He means kuffar get goodness in this dunya due to the vast rahmah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descends upon the believers. Once they leave and go to the akhirah, they're left with that darkness. The brother showed me a second clip before the halaqah. He used the verse in the same context. Another very famous, well-known Imam of Dalala used the verse in the same context. وَرَحْمَتِي وَسِعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ, to include the kuffar in the rahmah of the akhirah after they died. And just to show you something, the brother, Jazakallah khair, who showed me the clip, he handed me a tweet too, by that same character. And the tweet here is dated January 13. And I really don't like to get into these kind of details, but I just want to show you this is nifaq, not ijtihad. It's not a random big blunder. I mean, random big blunders do happen, but it's not even that. This is a systematic attack on wala'i bara. Let's read the tweet. وَرَحْمَتِي وَسِعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ فَسَأَكْتُبُهَا لِلَّذِينَ يَتَّقُونَ وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ بِآيَاتِنَا يُؤْمِنُونَ أي رحمتي تعم وتشمل. My rahmah is vast and encompassing, he said. فَسَأُكْرِمُ بِهَا عِبَادِيَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, I will honor the believing servants of mine. الَّذِينَ يَتْرُكُونَ الشِّرْكَ وَالْمَعَاصِي, the ones who leave shirk and sins. وَيَخَافُونَ الْحِسَابَ, and they fear the judgment day. وَيَخْشَوْنَ عُقُوبَةَ اللَّهِ, and they fear the punishment of Allah. This is the tweet. You hear anything wrong with that? It's absolutely correct, 100% correct. In this tweet, dated January 13 of this year, the brothers, Jazakallah khair, did some research. The tweet is proper in its meaning. Everything I told you in here is 100% correct. This same person, in an interview, after the death of the journalist, used the same verse in the exact opposite meaning to what he tweeted here. He wanted to include a mushrika into tawheed, into rahmah of Allah. So there was an update on tawheed. وَيَقُولُونَ عَلَى اللَّهِ الْكَذِبَ وَهُمْ يَعْلَمُونَ, they attribute lies to Allah knowingly. Tawheed and shirk change by day and night. I can go further and show much more, but it's not something I really like to get into. Had the brother not handed me this before class, I wouldn't have even mentioned it. The point is, this is not random mistakes that every human being makes. This is zandaqa. This is nifaq at its peak. There's deviant as the scholars of Bani Israel, who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them the parable and metaphor of a dog. وَاتْلُ عَلَيْهِمْ نَبَأَ الَّذِي آتَيْنَاهُ آيَاتِنَا فَانْسَلَخَ مِنْهَا فَأَتْبَعَهُ الشَّيْطَانُ فَكَانَ مِنَ الْغَاوِينَ. O Prophet, relate to them. Tell them the story of the one we gave him ayat, but he abandoned them. So the shaitan got a grip of him. The shaitan got a hold of him and he became a deviant. وَلَوْ شِئْنَا لَرَفَعْنَاهُ بِهَا وَلَكِنَّهُ أَخْلَدَ إِلَى الْأَرْضِ وَاتَّبَعَ هَوَاهُ فَمَثَلُهُ كَمَثَلِ الْكَلْبِ فمثله كمثل الكلب إن تحمل عليه يلهث أو تتركه يلهث ذلك مثل القوم الذين كذبوا بآياتنا فاقصص القصص لعلهم يتفكرون. If we will, we would have elevated him. ولو شئنا رفعناه بها. Elevated him with what? With following the ayat, sticking to the proof, sticking to the haqq. If we willed, we would have elevated him. وَلَكِنَّهُ أَخْلَدَ إِلَى الْأَرْضِ, he clung to the earth and followed in his vain desires. وَاتَّبَعَ هَوَاهُ فَمَثَلُهُ كَمَثَلِ الْكَلْبِ, he's like a dog. If you drive him away, he lolls his tongue out. And if you leave him alone, he lolls his tongue out. ذَلِكَ مَثَلُ الْقَوْمِ الَّذِينَ كَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِنَا. That is the description of the people who reject our ayat. ذلك مثل القوم الذين كذبوا بآياتنا. The second clip I was shown is no random child behind the screen or one of those youngsters, 20, 25 years old, from the Murja or modernists who read a few sentences and think they're the imams of all time. This one, the second one, is the head of the International Union of Muslim Scholars, الأمين العام للاتحاد العالمي لعلماء المسلمين. Do you see the severity of this matter? He's actually the successor in that position to Al-Qardawi, who Sheikh Nasr al-Fahd responded to many times and debated one of his students, and it's online. Al-Qardawi is the one who had the upper hand in starting this matter recently when he made dua for the Pope. Does Aqidah have an erratic behavior? Or is our Aqidah seasonal? In January, when it's cold outside, we'll exclude the mushrikeen from the rahmah of Allah. May 13, it's summer, the weather's getting warmer. Let's include them in the verse and in the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our tawheed and aqidah is not a game. وَذَرِ الَّذِينَ اتَّخَذُوا دِينَهُمْ لَعِبًا وَلَهْوًا. Leave those who take their religion as play and amusement. In another verse, الذين اتخذوا دينهم لهوا ولعبا وغرتهم الحياة الدنيا فاليوم ننساهم كما نسوا لقاء يومهم هذا وما كانوا بآياتنا يجحدون. Between leaders like this, the leaders of Irja, the slaves of the Tawaghit, you can see why we haven't advanced a millimeter in liberating Palestine. In fact, it's constant retreat. Another brother sent me a clip yesterday. What the speaker did in that clip, he took the opinions, look at this tadlis, he took the opinions of the ulama and the children of the kuffar and applied it to the adults of the kuffar so they can be included in the rahmah of Allah after they die, Yawm al-Qiyamah. Another very well-known Imam of Dalala interpreted this verse as being the people of the book. He said it means the people of the book and the Muslims are included. Ibn Abbas and others, as I stated, said it's exclusive for this ummah. Do the people of the book believe in the messenger and aid him and support him and help him? آمنوا به وعزروه ونصروه واتبعوا النور الذي أنزل معه. Do they believe in the Quran? Are we missing out on something here? What's more surprising than the low point of these imams of dalala and their lack of haya? If they had any haya, would he, haya alone, would he do something like this? Change in 4 months the tawheed? What is more amazing than that is the massive amount of passive sheep followers who listen to this and take them as their shuyukh and ulama. This is deeper than the issue of dua and rahmah for a dead kafir. This is not random mistakes and misinterpretation. This is a systematic attack on our identity and aqidah from within. I think this is sufficient on this matter, or should we respond more to more of their allegations?